Hey guys, and welcome to our first Linux video demo. In this lesson we'll talk about a few commands that you can use to navigate the Linux file system. It's exciting stuff. I have a list of commands that we'll talk about on the right. This will be really handy if you want to take notes. On the left side I have a terminal window where I'll demonstrate the commands. Now I know it might look a little intimidating, but don't worry about it. I promise you it's very easy. Let's start off with a really useful command, ls. ls provides you a listing of the current files in the directory that you're in. Now if you notice, the view that I have of these files is not very useful. First of all, I can't really tell what's a file and what's a directory because I don't really trust file names or the coloring on the shell. And second of all, I really have no information about the contents of a directory. So to get a little bit more information about the content, I can use ls with a -l option. The -l option provides you the output in a list format that has a lot more information, and it's a lot more conducive to regular Linux operations. So let's go through some of these data elements to make sure that you're familiar with them. On the left side here, we have the permissions string for Linux. Now the permissions are a little bit beyond this tutorial, but I want you to pay attention to this one tiny little element. The first character, if it's a hyphen, that means that it's a file. If it's a D, that means that it's a directory. It's a good way to tell what you're looking at. I know that there's some color in here that's configured through the shell, but don't trust it. Always look at this first character. The second column that provides some useful information is the owner of the file. So the alternative is the log file, and you clearly see it's owned by user root. The second column is the group ownership. You can also see that it's owned by a group named root. Not the same thing as the user root, but a group called root. You can see, for example, that auth.log is owned by syslog, and the group ownership is the ADM. The next column provides the file size, which is in blocks. Not particularly useful, but we'll talk later about how to get that in a slightly more useful format. The next column provides you the last modified date, which is the last date and time that the file was altered. And the last column, as you can probably already tell, provides you with the name of the file of a directory. So this is all good stuff. Now let's get a little fancy with ls and pass a couple more arguments to it. For example, this is the var log directory. The var log directory holds the log files for the operating system, and various other applications that you're running will print log files to this directory. It's kind of like the event viewer for Linux. So since this is a log files directory and I'm here looking for a log file, I probably want the most recent log files to show up together. So I want to sort this list based on the last modified date. No problem, let's get an option for that. I just pass the T option, hit enter. Oops, I forgot the L. Cool, now check this out. So all the files and directories are now sorted based on the last modified date. May 13th is today, and this is the last file that was modified in the system at 10:17 p.m. So that is what the T option does. Now, one thing I want you to pay attention to is that the oldest files actually got printed on the bottom. So if you have a directory that has a couple hundred files and you're sorting it by the last modified date, you would have to scroll up to find the file that you're looking for, which is not very useful and can be a real pain after a while. So here comes the next ls option we're going to learn about, R. R is very, very useful. Remember this option. R will sort it, but it will sort it in reverse. So now when I run lsltr, lsltr, I can see that the most recent files that I have actually show up on the bottom. And this works with any sort option for ls. Very, very useful. Memorize it, I promise you will not regret it. So the next option for ls that we'll learn about is ls dash capital S. Capital S will sort the output based on file size. So you can see that now the largest files show up on top. And again, just with the time last modified date, the largest files show up on top, which is not very useful. I had the R option, boom, they show up on the bottom. Now let's talk about the file size for a second. In Linux, the default file size that shows up with LSL is in block size, which is not very useful if you're just looking for large files, because you would have to sit here and kind of estimate or do the math. So LS provides a really handy option, H. Add H to LSL, and you will get the file size in what they call a human readable format, which is a lot easier because now you can see that the file size is displayed in kilobytes. If I had some large log files, it will be displayed in megabytes or gigabytes. It would just abbreviate the file size to something that was actually easy to read for me. So that's great. That's pretty much all the major options of ls command that you would need to know. Obviously, there are many more options to it, but these are just kind of the core ones that you would use every day. The next command that we'll learn about is pwd. Pwd has a very straightforward purpose. It's a very easy command. It doesn't take in any useful arguments, and the only thing it does is it prints out the current directory that you're in. So easy peasy, right? You can see that I ran the command and it shows me that I'm currently in var log directory. The next command is cat. Cat is a very useful command as well. The purpose of cat is to print the output of a file to the screen. So I can take cat, let me find a good log file like current log1. I'll paste it in here. Cat prints out the entire contents of a file to the screen, which is great if it's a small file. If it's a larger file, you'll run into problems with cat because it will take forever. And we'll talk about some of the things that some of the other commands that you can use to print out larger files, just how to work with large files in Linux in general. We'll talk about that in a different lesson because it's a very good skill to have. But just so that you know, if you see a small file, you can safely print it with cat. The next command is cd. If you're familiar with the Windows command line, cd will be very familiar to you. Cd is used to change directories. So for example, I can run cd ... to go up one directory. So this will take me to the parent. And now if I run pwd, I can see that I'm in var. I can do lsl, make sure I'm in a different directory. I can also cd back into the current directory that I was in, which is log. I can find some other directory to go into. Cd upstart will take me into the upstart directory. And I can do an lsl or a pwd to make sure that I'm actually in that directory. Pretty straightforward, right? Alright, so the next few commands are about interacting with content at a very basic level. So let me go into my home test directory. I can do an ls-l to see the contents of it. It looks like I have file 2 and a couple of directories. So first of all, we're going to move and copy some of the stuff around. But first of all, let's go ahead and cat file 2 to see what's in it. It says goodbye. Alright, so now let's go ahead and copy file 2 into directory. First of all, let's see what is currently in directory. So notice that I'm running ls-l and I'm passing an argument of a directory. So in this operation, the ls-l output will be actually for the directory that I'm passing to it. So it looks like we have file 1 in directory. I can use the copy command to copy the file 2 that I currently have in test into directory. So the first argument to copy is the source. So in this case, the source is file 2. And the second argument to copy is the directory that you would like to copy the file to. So here I would type in directory, and boom, the file is in there. Notice how you don't receive any confirmation prompts. You don't receive any output at all. It just does what you tell it to. I can do ls-l on directory, and I can see that it now has file 2. Now let's do an ls-l on directory 2, which is another directory I have in here, and it looks like it has file 2 as well. Alright, so this is a great opportunity for us to get into a couple more Linux commands. Let's go ahead and remove the file 2 that is currently located in directory 2. So to remove a file, I would use something, a command called rm. Rm is a really straightforward command. It takes in the file that you would like to delete as an argument. So here I can type in directory 2 file2.txt, press enter, and now the file should no longer be there. So if I do an ls-l on directory 2 now, it'll show me that I have 0 items in that folder. Now notice this again, it's very important about Linux. There's no confirmation prompts, there's no recycle bin, there's none of these fail safes that are implemented on Windows file systems. Linux will do exactly what you tell it to. I mean, it doesn't ask you again. So that's kind of a good and a bad thing, because it assumes that you already know what you're doing, but it's a bad thing because if you make one typo, a lot of files could be missing. So now let's go ahead and move file 2 into directory 2. Oops. Again, file moved, no output. And then I can do ls-l in directory 2 to verify that the file is actually in there. And I can even cat it if I was suspicious of Linux and I wanted to verify it. Still says goodbye. The same file we looked at earlier. And if I do an ls-l-now, I can see that the file was actually moved and it's no longer in my directory. Well, this pretty much wraps up this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll talk about a few more command line utilities that you can use in Linux to administrate the system and get a little bit more information about it.